This could be really good or really bad. Oh, got it. Okay, you're recording because it just told me
There we
recording.
go. Yeah, we're recording now. Where did he got to turn on his microphone? Our podcast is
Don't try this.
whatever we wind up talking about.
Don't try this shit at home.
The what?
Don't try this shit at home.
Don't try this shit at home podcast. We lost Dave CC. What does CC mean?
Corpus Christi. Oh,
Oh,
that's what I thought it
so
was.
are you ashamed to? So how did you get? Let's hear a story from Mr. John and how he started in real estate.
Oh, geez. That was back in
We like
1982.
stories.
Back in 1982, there was all these midnight prophets were on all night long, talk about making millions of dollars in real estate. And I was working for $3.20 an hour as a manager of a hardware lumber yard, and figured that there had to be a better way. And so I wound up going down to Albuquerque, and I did not know that those were come-ons. How that they make money is to put, you come down for free, and we'll teach you how to be a millionaire. The guy's name was Mark Harrelson, very nice gentleman. And I did not have $500 to buy the books, but I did have 5 years, and he made $5 million in 5 years. And I figured, let's jump in. And I jumped in with both feet, went to the bank, found a repo. There's a lot of chapters in between. I found a repo that was more of a blower upper than a fixer upper, and they wanted $7,500 for the house. And I didn't know my butt from first base on anything. And I did have a lot of return damaged doors and windows that were cracked and mistint paint and so forth. And so I bought the first house. And actually, the way I bought the first house was I had a pickup truck that wouldn't start and run to the bank so I could use it because they needed to see the truck to loan on it. And the bank really wanted to get that REO off of as the real estate owned, off of their books. So he said, well, just take pictures of the truck. So I took pictures of the truck and took the title of the truck down, and they loaned me $7,500 on the truck. And they gave me an advance of $7,000 for remodel costs. I didn't know if it was going to cost $10 or $10,000, didn't have a clue. And wound up putting a damaged front door in because it didn't have a door in it. I put in a cracked window because we had at that time the thermal pane windows came sealed, and whenever they came over the Vita Pass, they would crack because of the pressure change, and which was pretty common. So I put a broken window and a damaged door, and used mist-tint paint and painted the inside of it. Scavenged some rip out carpet. I knew a guy that had carpet store, and I scavenged some rip out carpet and recarpeted the 2 bedrooms in 2 different colors and the living room in a third color. And my full intention, that was in 1982. And if you'll go back and look at what the interest rates were in 1982, they were 22 to 25%. And my full intention was to do like Mark Harrelson said, you fix them and then people buy them. Well, at 22% interest, there was no one buying. So I wound up renting it to a very fine young couple. We're still friends today. And Dan and Connie Montoya, very nice people. And they rented that house for quite some time. And then another gentleman had a rental house that had been a rental for 30 years. And he just wanted to be rid of it. And so I did not know anything about creative financing. I didn't know anything about anything. And I went over and sat down and visited with him. And I said, hey, I know I can do it. And he trusted me. And so I gave him a promise you I'm going to pay you for 6 months. And I went in, and literally the carpet was so wore out that it had worn through the carpet into the floor. It was not in the best part of town. Tore the carpet out, painted the floor battleship gray with a house paint, and made the water heater work, and wound up renting that house. And again, we painted the house with mist tint paint on the inside. And then that led to another house that was for sale. And it had been for sale for 7 years. And I went over and sat down and visited with them. They decided to sell me the house for $12,000. And I went to the bank and I didn't know what I was even asking for. I said, I own a title on this house and I have a opportunity to have a title on the house on Ladue. And they said, well, you have to own the house on Ladue before we can loan it. So I went and talked to the guy that was selling it. And he said, I trust you and you better not screw me. And so he gave me the title to that house. I cross collateralized those two houses and bought the third one and went inside, and it was more of a blower upper than a fixer upper. And I put up scratch paneling, two-tone, it was two different colors of paneling in the bedrooms, and started renting that house. And then that led to the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And then a lady had 5 mobile homes that she wanted to get rid of, and I wound up buying 3 out of the 5. And by the way, don't ever buy a mobile home. They suck. They really, really suck. And
You know what? We almost bought one. I'm glad we didn't now that you said that.
well,
I
I
see
can
a
guarantee
lot
you
of them on
if
the
you
market.
if you see a mobile home and it is at Alamosa is at 7,800 foot elevation and it gets colder than Blixen, you have a weekend job every weekend fixing. And so that's how we got started. Was just my intention was to flip houses and turned out being a rental landlord. And then I bought another house. A guy had inherited a house, and this was my all-time best story. He had inherited the house and he had it advertised for sale through a third party. I heard about it, and he had an exact amount that he wanted for it, and he wanted 12,300 and change for it. And I thought, well, that's odd. Why would somebody have an exact amount that they want? And so I talked to him, and he said, I'm going to buy a boat. And he even pulled the brochure out of his pocket, said, I'm going to buy that boat. And that was back whenever that the tri-hull fiberglass boats were a big deal with the split windshield. I had, through another acquaintance, I had access to a boat yard. And so I went to Denver and told the guy, I'm going to take this boat home so my wife can look at it, see if she likes it. And interest rates were high, so they were real lenient about letting you take stuff off the yard. And I took it down there, parked it in front of the house, and called the guy up and said, does it look like this? He came out and said, yeah, that's exactly what I want. So I traded the boat for the house. And then I had to run back to Denver and I refinanced the house. And then I had to run back to Denver and pay the guy $8,000 for the boat. And so I traded a boat that I didn't own for a house that I didn't own. And that's the so that's how you do it. It's I'm a firm believer that there is any such thing as a bad cloud without a silver lining. And the only way you can have a negative is if there's a positive somewhere in the mix.
So, Dave, that finally just joined us. How did you get into real estate?
Through my dad. Was kind of
Can you
raised
hear
cutting
me?
my teeth doing it. I remember being not much more than about 8 years old and sweating copper fitting, him teaching me how to sweat copper fittings on the tailgate of an old Ford pickup, and then being told, go under that crawl hole. I'm too big. You're little. You fit. Go. And we plumbed underneath of a house, and that was one of my earlier memories in real estate and uh, picking up leaves and garbage, trashing out houses, and cleaning and doing labor work. I remember sitting after a long day of work in the back of a Ford Fairmont station wagon, sipping on soda that we bought, and that was our reward for working that day.
Hey, do you remember the house that you had to dig the tunnel under the house so we could replumb it?
I do
We
very
did that
well.
with 2 5-gallon buckets and a little gardening trowel. We've done it the hard way.
So, what was your first property you bought, Dave?
First property I bought was the his first
702.
property, the 1102 property. I bought that off of him in 2006. And he essentially, we didn't know we were doing it at the time. He made me a Gator loan or a PML loan on it, where that he financed the building materials to do a new lipstick remodel on it. And we did, well, it was more than a lipstick remodel. It was pretty in depth, but, and it just kept going and going and going. That's where mission creep comes in. You just start fixing on something and find something more to fix and more to fix. And you end up thinking you got a 3-week project and you're into we turned that one into a good 2-3 months. But,
Did you say mission creep?
Mission creep. Yeah, it's a military term. When you go out there, you have an objective in mind, and then the mission just kind of creeps over here, and pretty soon you're off in the wrong place doing the wrong thing, and you're not there for what you came for, right, Dan?
Well, we did good
Sounds
on that
like
house.
my life.
We did good on that house. I bought that house when interest rates were stupid high. I bought that house actually in June of '82, and rented the house from June of '82 until 2006, and it really never found a vacancy. It stayed full all the time. And then Dave bought it, and then we flipped that house. Wasn't it? Did we get 79.9 for that house, Dave? It seems to me.
That sounds about right.
And
it made revenue from '82 to, that was in '06. It made revenue from '82 to '06 and underwent 2 or 3 remodels in the time. And then finally sold it to a guy in '06, '07.
Yeah. The CPA that we were using, or the tax lady that we were using, did accelerated depreciation on it. And between all the different houses that we had and all the different stuff that we did, I did not, and I can honestly stand on a stack of Bibles and show you my tax returns. I did not pay any federal or state tax from 1982 until 2004, I think it was. And I got the tax benefits from it. And so you look at the rental income was good, but my ex-wife worked full time. I worked full time, and we did not pay any income tax. And people say, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky." And it's like, no, I'm not lucky. Honest to God, true story. I worked in the same town that I had the rental houses in, and had a deal with my boss that I was going to be gone an hour plus, and he was a super great boss. And I would run home and paint on my lunch hour, and then and there's tricks to painting. You can roll your roller up in a Walmart bag and throw it in the freezer and not have to worry about cleaning the rollers out, and get back to work, and then work. And then I drove the mail at night. I worked during the daytime at the hardware store and drove the mail at night. And so between the two jobs, I would paint houses on my lunch hour and at night before I went to the other job. And then I drove the mail up to Colorado Springs and back at night. And I got a whole whopping about 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours a night, every night of sleep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's been.
So what's the best tenant and the worst tenant you've ever had?
The best tenant, as far as I know.
This opened up a can of something.
As far as I know, my daughter still has the best tenant we ever had. In 1984, I moved a young college kid and his girlfriend into the 925 house, and to my knowledge, he's still there. And he did everything.
Wow.
And then another excellent tenant that I had, Alamosa is a college town, and I rented to a young college girl, and she paid the rent, through the year. And then she wanted me to hold the house till she came back to school. And I'm like, no, if you want it, rent it. So her dad came down and we negotiated a deal where he paid the yearly rent instead of a monthly rent. And that kept the house so that she could come back to school the next year. And that dad was a retired some government employee, and he was a hobby home repair guy. And he gutted the bathroom down to the floor joists and the studs and rebuilt the bathroom at no cost to me. And he gutted the kitchen down to the floor joists and the studs and remodeled completely the kitchen, put a new roof on the house at no cost at all to me. That would be the great tenants. If you knew how tight the rental market is in Alamosa, or was in Alamosa, the college kids would just hang on to them.
Wow.
They pay the rent through the summer just so that they had the place to come back to in the fall. So that's great that there's no maintenance and no anything going on, because it's 3 months while they're off back home that the property stays rented with nobody in it.
That's wonderful that you got that lucky. I don't think anybody really gets that lucky.
The worst tenants I ever
So
had,
same question to you, Dave.
All my experience has just been with the as far as for tenant experience was with or through my dad's business. So I'd kind of be dovetailing onto his stuff. I've done, my flips and stuff, and then I've kind of pursued a career in trucking that I'm ready to get back into real estate and get back into the fun. Probably the worst tenant that I can remember. We had a house that we ended up, the tenants trashed it so bad it ended up being a hoarder house, and we got halfway through the clean out project on it and said, no, this is a demo. We ended up demoing the house and hauling it off. It was that bad.
Yeah, we had two of them.
Wow.
Actually, we did that.
That bad, huh?
We had two houses that we dozed down. We had a tenant that I don't know if you're familiar with what adobe is, but it's dirt blocks that are stacked up. It's very solid. Well, they decided they wanted to put a pass-through window between the kitchen and the dining room. So they hacked out a hole in an adobe wall. Well, if you do that, the adobe that's on the top falls out, and then the next one falls out. And the neighbor called me up and said, there's something wrong with your house. One of the things I made a point is to know all the neighbors around all my houses, because they're the best bird dogs there is in the world. And he told me there's something wrong with your house because the roof is leaning down. And I went over, and sure enough, you couldn't open the front door. The Vega across the top had broke, and the roof was caving down. And I called a contractor there in town, and he came over, looked at it. He says, no, I don't even go back in that house. It's dangerous. So we dozed down that house.
Oh. Did you charge them for a house?
They walked away.
Oh, man.
It's not all peaches and cream, as they say. There's goods and bads, but it's in the long run, it afforded me a lifestyle that we could have never done otherwise.
So I got a quick question for you. What's the background you got there? You're not really there.
Actually, I am. That's what I was telling your wife earlier, that road that's over my shoulder here, that's a 2-track that goes over the Continental Divide. You're looking at the Continental Divide right behind me. That's about 4 miles from my cabin.
Okay.
My cabin is at about.
I know I drove past it many times.
What's that?
I know that we've drove past it many a times.
Yeah, it's
Continental Divide.
It's about 4 miles from my cabin.
Segue into trucking stories now.
We can do trucking stories as soon as I get ready to roll again.
Well, let's segue into that then.
All right. So, what made you want to get into trucking?
I would get in trouble in grade school for staring out the window.
That's you.
So I needed a job that I could get paid staring out the window.
You get paid every day to stare out a window, don't you?
Yeah. You go with what you're good at.
I don't know how old you are, but do you remember was it late 70s, 80s show called BJ and the Bear?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was before me, I think. I don't recall seeing that.
Yeah, that is what made me want to become a trucker when I was a little kid. I was a little kid at the time.
Oh,
And
very cool. He had a route going. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
took me about 30 years to decide to be a trucker. So
Wow. Okay.
I ended up doing over the road for a short amount of time, for about a year altogether. And then now I work in Cisco delivering it because the over the road stuff was not too healthy for us.
Well, we can say some over the road stories.
Yeah.
We're out in the middle of where we were in Chicago. It was dark outside, and I was all gung ho, and we stopped at a rest area. Had to use the restroom. I said, "Do you need to go?" And no. So I got in, got out, got in, took off. All of a sudden, I hear this ringtone, and it's his ringtone because I have just a ringtone for him. And I'm yelling, I'm like, Jim, Jim, no Jim. So I answered the phone because I couldn't answer it the first time. He goes, are you gonna come back and get me? I'm still at the truck stop.
Was that your truck?
That is. Oh, let me go back to it.
So
Go ahead, Shelley.
now there's this big joke about don't leave me behind.
Yeah.
I tried to apparently do it. I tried to leave him in Nebraska. Was it Nebraska too?
No, that was in Ohio.
Oh, Ohio?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I stand corrected. It was Ohio. I guess I
Well,
just can't get rid of him.
I've traveled this country
It was
from
at one
shore
of the
to
truck
shore.
stops off on Highway 80.
That's where I'm at today. But I mean, well, I started in
Right?
Ohio, through there. I'm in Nebraska right now, Ogallala, Nebraska, or something like that.
Right.
Aren't you up there at the
No.
We used
stop
to
trail?
spend a lot of time in Lincoln, Nebraska,
Oh, okay.
in
Spent
Omaha.
quite a bit of time over there, Eastern. Yep.
Didn't we get a? Didn't one of us? What? Oh, we ran out of gas.
Right over Lincoln, yeah.
Do you see that? Do you ever
Where
see
was that?
that Lincoln, that big monument at the rest area?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's around where it happened. We used to stop there a lot. At least I did. Gets cold.
So, how long have you been trucking?
I got my license in 2001. When I got out of the Marine Corps, they had recruiters for the truck driving school come around and say, "Hey, you got plenty of time while they're checking you out of the military. They usually give you you got a little extra time on your hands." So they said, "You can get this
So,
school paid for while you're still on active duty and have something to fall back on when you get out." And I had been in aviation side of the Marine Corps, so I said, "Oh no, I'm going to get a job with Bell or Boeing or somebody. They're going to be lined up around the
right.
corner knocking on my door waiting to get me hired." And that wasn't the case. But I did do that career school coming out of the
Right.
military and got my CDL, and it was a real godsend because I left the military with a pretty inflated sense of self-importance, and ended up was working for a dirt moving company out in El Cajon, California. The guy said, "Yeah, we'll put you on the next day." So after 3 months of trying to get into the aviation field, they were happy to put me in a truck. Guys have a whole lot more hard time now with insurance requirements and all that. They've got to go to a pretty unsavory carrier or somebody to get their experience in. But fortunately, God blessed me with putting that guy in my path, and he got me my experience. And then I moved on from there to I've hauled side loader trucks for Budweiser and done route and local work. I've hauled but I've hauled refrigerated. Primarily do tankers. Really enjoy that. Hauled crude oil out in South Texas. Loved that. Hauled fuel for several years and was a driver trainer with another company for hauling fuel to the gas station from the, from the fuel refinery to the gas station. That was a lot of fun. I like those in delivery routes. And right now I'm doing hauling chemicals. I have anything from, I think this is some kind of soap base or shampoo base that I've got on right now. I've hauled paint base and all the chemicals they use to mix up paint, soaps, thinners, solvents. A lot of paints and coatings are probably
Okay.
about half or more of what we do, and then we also do soaps and solvents and just general chemicals.
What was that company that we worked for in Kansas City that was under the bridge? It's a big, I can't think of it. So, how long before you decided to work for yourself?
I had company driven for about 16 years, but I wanted to do plenty of due diligence. So I'd been thinking about buying a truck for about the last 5 years that I was company driving. So I finally purchased a truck in 2015. So I guess that was about 14 years, not 16 years. And 2 years leading up to buying the truck, I was watching the company trucks I was in, would write down all the fuel prices that I paid for, or, what the boss paid for the fuel, would write down those numbers and write down all the mechanical numbers, and was watching truck prices real close and tried to pick out a good truck and good time to jump into the market. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
My first truck was an old 2000. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, what kind of truck do you have that you purchased? And is it still your first truck that you purchased?
No, my first truck was a old 2012 CXU Mac, and that truck treated me really, really well. I purchased it with about 400,000 miles on it. I ran it out to over 815 was what it had on it when I sold it off. And then I got into a Freightliner Cascadia, had that for about 6 months, and those Cascadias get really expensive around that 500,000 mile mark. And in 6 months, I dumped in 20,000 in repairs into it, and so I sold it off and gave a great deal to a guy. I was ready to be out of the truck, and then he called me 2 years later, or a year and a half later, told me he hadn't had a stitch of trouble out of the truck since. So I fixed him up a real nice truck.
Right.
And then I went
So
into
I
this
want to.
truck. Oh, go ahead, Shelley.
No, go ahead. Finish your story, and then I got a different question.
So I jumped into this truck. I'll throw it on it's my screensaver. I'm pretty proud of it. I don't know if you can see that. That's a 2021 Mac Anthem. And I put LED underglow on it, and it'll do all kinds of colors with the LED.
Looks,
That's a limited
reminds me of
edition.
Maximum Overdrive truck.
Yep. And as it turns out, I've got a big Maximum Overdrive tattoo up my left calf.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
when you first started driving, what was the dumbest thing you've ever done to the truck? We all have that story.
There's a lot. It takes practice. It's not something you're born with. And I'm kind of a dumb guy, so I really have to learn things 2 and 3 times the hard way. My second week in that Budweiser truck, I backed into a Coca-Cola truck. Driver's side, there should have been no reason in the world. And scrubbed that red Coca-Cola truck was in there delivering a gas station. I went to pull in beside him, and I had a white Hackney trailer with a Bud Light logo down the side of it. That's kind of embarrassing these days. But anyway, backed up alongside of there and left a nice red stripe down that Bud Light thing. And that was one of them.
right. I'm sure that there are plenty. I mean, we've all had them. But how did you transition from trucking into investing? Is it because tired of looking out that window?
It is tough. My kids are getting older, and I've realized how much time I've missed being able to be home with the kids, doing over the road. And I mean, just it's the schedule of a truck driver. It's, most of the time you're anywhere from 11 to 14 hours a day legally that you're driving, and then you're commuting back home, or you're sleeping or trying to get laundry done, or something during that off time. It's a tough life, and you miss a lot of neat things, a lot of ball games, a lot of events, birthdays, all kinds of things that you miss out
Special
there.
events, yeah.
So I've just
I kind of came off the road for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
Or we both did. Well, for me, the biggest thing to come off the road is I wanted to see my daughters and things that she's going through in school, because I was unable to attend a lot of events because we were on the road, and I didn't like that very much. So I decided to get a local truck driving job, and that's where I'm at now, obviously. But I understand where you're coming from with that.
Yes, sir. Well, and even the local ones, you're 14 hours, 12-hour, 11-hour shift, and then you're, minimum hour commute home. You've lost an hour or two on top of that. You're still out of the house for 16 hours a day. That's where I found it to be, pretty tough.
Yeah. It's still the same, but you are here for some things now where you weren't before. You weren't even.
It's hard though.
It's a hard life.
I didn't like being. It's after like 10 hours, I was like starting to have a meltdown, and it's like this is hard. It's kind of hard to stay motivated and stay working, and I didn't like being off of work and then trying to sleep in this bouncy truck while he's trying to drive, and it was pretty wearing on all of us.
As a team driver, you are constantly exhausted because your sleep is not like sleeping at home in a bed, and it's tough. I mean, you're just feel constantly exhausted, and so much better come home and sleeping in your own bed every night anyway. At least that's one good thing about it.
Yeah, I became friendly with those 5-hour energy drinks that you sell at the convenience store.
That's what I was doing off camera. It's a monster.
No, I've had the little ones that were shot that it says 5-hour on the
5-hour energy shots.
They want you to drink half of it, but I chugged the whole thing.
Or multiple ones.
Yeah. Buy 6-pack of them.
Well, my dad drove truck too as well, and that kind of gave me the love for it.
Okay.
Well, so let's hear some of your stories.
Oh,
John?
shit. I drove the four corners. I drove a straight truck, and I did the four corners, and I left home at midnight. That was back before they went to CDL when they had Class A's. And I would leave the house at midnight and play with the cartoon book to where I could get back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon legal. And I don't know. I think that the worst experience I had was I rolled a truck off Wolf Creek Pass, and that should have killed me, but it didn't. But that was
hopefully a learning experience.
What's that? I didn't hear you.
Said hopefully a learning experience.
Well,
hopefully that was a learning experience for you.
Those kinds of learning experiences are you either learn or you don't. If you don't, they get to bring roses. But no,
yeah,
it jacked there was some injuries from it. It completely, totally wiped out a truck. It was a Transtar 2 cab over, and it wiped the truck off of the frame and just smashed it back. But it that was they told me that I would never walk again. That was the day before Thanksgiving, 1987, I think. I think it was 87, day before Thanksgiving. And they told me Well, they told my ex-wife that I had less than a 1% chance of being alive in the morning because I had massive heart bruises. And obviously I survived that. And then the doctor came in and he says, I'm not one to flower coat it. You'll never walk again. And I said, no, let's go with plan B is what? And because I had twisted my hips, stayed in the seatbelt, and my shoulders were turned at a 9-degree angle the opposite direction. And but went through a whole lot of therapy, and then that was the day before Thanksgiving, and I returned to work. I got my medical release on the 28th of February, and the boss could not believe that I would ever be back in a truck. And because they saw the truck and they saw my medical records, and but I got back in the truck and drove for another what 2 3 years after that. And I drove until they sold the company. And when they sold the company, they didn't take any of the existing drivers. And so I went back to retail. I've been in retail off and on all my life since I was 15 years old. So went back to retail. And then that's how I got out of the trucking business. They went to CDLs and there was a whole lot of angst. And I don't know if you were around driving at that time, but there was a lot of angst about drivers saying if everybody refuses to do a CDL, they won't go to it. Well, that went the way it went. And so then I went back to retail and been in retail ever since. In 1997, I started the furniture store, and that's what I'm still doing. That and playing in real estate.
Yeah. So let's kind of transition to the real estate part. And do you have any
Well,
questions there?
the
So,
my son and I
what
were talking
kind
about
of real
different.
estate have you done so far?
I'm sorry.
Uh, So, what kind of real estate deals have you done so far besides
Besides
rentals?
yeah.
Well,
You done any sailing?
I did back whenever that I was involved in the rentals. I did a couple of seller finance, and those work actually. I it is tough doing a seller finance. The way I did it was tough. You're basically trusting the other guy not to tear your house apart. But I did it all wrong. If you want to know the wrong way to do anything, let me know. I could be sure to write you a book. the
Yeah.
So
I have a PhD in the wrong way. But no,
well, you know what? You got to learn the wrong way, I guess, to do the right way.
yeah. Well, my son and I were talking about various different things about I want to retire and he wants to get out of the truck. And so I was watching, and there was a gentleman, Thomas Way, that does a tax sales. And so we were watching that. And one night there was a YouTube came on with pacemorby, and I sat there and watched it. And I called him up and I said, whatever you're doing, stop. You have to watch this YouTube. and that's how we got to where we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I found him. I found him watching YouTube because we had done a program. It was like what was that, like a boot camp thing, and back in January,
Right.
we went to Florida and attended that, and that was like 4 days, intense early morning, late at night, sort of teaching, and we paid for, he had his friends, and he was panhandling, the other stuff, and his friends had their stuff they were trying to sell, and they had mentors that you had to pay thousands of dollars for that, which didn't do much good for us. And I mean, we're awful at phone calls to sellers, and I think we got discouraged and just gave up and tried to do something else. And then I found pace, and we kind of graduated into that from there.
I don't think that we gave up or anything. Just kind of we're searching for other options besides what we were doing, something that fit our personalities a little bit better. And that's where we found pace and figured out what our real personalities are. And now we are moving forward with that, and that's where we're at now. That's why we're on Zoom, because we're trying to grow.
Well, we scratched together all the money that, the little bit of money that we could scratch together, and we formed a LLC, and we went all the steps of I'm drawing a blank on the name of them, that does the LLCs for us. And we did,
PCS.
yeah, PCS. And so we did our Wyoming LLC, and then because of the tax laws in Texas, we put our other LLC in Texas. And so we're still writing the book of what you can do. We are currently in a couple of different projects. Well, we're in 3 different projects right now.
Do you do any gator lending or any private money lending?
We're doing PML.
Oh, are you? Okay, we'll have to talk about that later.
We'll talk about that off the Zoom.
Yeah, right. So has anybody else got anything?
It seems like it's a good game, but it's a tough game.
Right.
But yeah, it's exciting.
Gotta cover yourself.
What's that?
You just got to cover yourself is the main thing to protect your investment.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody thinking about going into it, I would say definitely do all your PML, or I mean, all your due diligence or whatever. When you have that little question that pops up in the back of your mind that says, wait a minute, does that really fit with my experience? Go back and investigate it. That's somebody that's your subconscious or something trying to tell you there's a red flag here. Go back and don't leave no stone unturned is what I would advise to anybody. Anytime that you have that little voice in the back of your head that says something, follow through.
The other thing
there's
I would
a
say
reason for that. That's for sure.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is make sure that it's in your contract that you can go and review and view and follow up on what's going on. So you get to be boots on the ground. And I would say that even if you don't know a paintbrush from a hammer handle, go there, see the project, see what's going on, be proactive. That it just, you need to be boots on the ground. You need to be seeing what's happening, and don't just assume.
Right.
Trust but verify.
Yeah. Yes. And talking about red flags, I would have to recommend that you always listen to your TC because they are trying to cover your bet, but don't let your emotions become part of it because you may make some bad mistakes.
Well,
I have no clue who he's talking about.
back when I was back in the 80s and 90s, whenever I was active in real estate the first time, there's a lot of money in real estate, good and bad. You can lose a lot, you can make a lot. But be proactive, know what you're getting. And then one of the old people that had been in real estate a long time, whenever that I was on my 3rd house or 4th house, whatever, it was like, ooh, I like this house. Ooh. And he told me something that I have kept in my mind forever since. Never, ever, ever, ever fall in love with a house. Just don't fall in love with a house. It's a deal. It's either going to make you money or it's going to lose you money. Whenever I buy merchandise for the store, never forget.
Japanese. Are you there still?
Did I lose you?
I'm hearing you. Somebody's got a bad connection.
Well, sometimes I think that the what we say is delayed
Yeah.
because I'll talk when there's nobody talking, and then it sounds like I'm talking over somebody, and I'm not.
Well, it's a learning curve. You'll get this so good next time.
Yeah.
Is there gonna be a next time?
Well, do you want to talk about random stuff?
Right.
What time is
There's
it? 4:14. We got to leave pretty soon. We're having dinner with my youngest daughter. I haven't seen her in a while.
I didn't make out what you said.
I said we need to cut this off for in a second because we're gonna have dinner with my youngest daughter.
What are we having? I'll be right over.
No, we're going to her house or her
Oh.
apartment. We're going out to eat. Of course, she only does ramen noodles and she wants Chinese ramen noodles.
I remember those days.
I don't know.
But she still likes it. She's an adult now.
I know she's 25.
She can afford more.
Yeah, that's for sure.
The only reason we ate them is because we were poor.
Well, they're 10 cents a little.
And they're worth almost what you paid for
Almost.
Yeah,
Right.
and that includes the wrapper.
them. Well, thank you very much for having us.
Anyway, and thank you for being our guest tonight. And
all the stories.
we look
Thanks for your
forward
time.
to
Always a pleasure.
yeah, same here. And we thank you for contributing to our chaos that we're doing here. And we're gonna be moving it on. But thank you very much. We're gonna say goodbye for now, and we will talk with you guys later.
All right. Look forward to it.
And
The big red button.
wait a minute.